Working on a so used to saying 2000. This is not a 2000. It's a 1997 Dodge. It's got the Dodge grill. Dodge B3500. I've never worked on something this big. It's a beach wheel. I tell you, it's a big old church fan. Complaint came in for the brakes being spongy. The car sat for 3 years. I said car. The van sat for 3 years, and after the brakes were done, from what the customer stated, the brakes just would be spongy ever since. Now, it could just be something with the ABS unit here, like just air getting into the system. But that's the least of my concerns right now, because we have other major problems that will affect the brake performance, and it's vacuum related. So I wasn't satisfied with the vacuum in the crankcase, because I went on ahead and checked the vacuum here at the brake booster. I'm going to show you that. I would prefer 20 inches of mercury, but it's not. It's around 15. It'll go up to like 10 or so when you start pressing the brakes. But there's excessive amount of vacuum in the crankcase. Let me get the camera set up. I'm going to let you hear it first, then I'm going to do some basic checks. Kind of hard to describe the feel of the brake pedal through, I guess, a verbal representation. But just understand, when you apply the brake, it's not as soft like it from an assisted aspect, and it sinks. So it's hard, it's a little firm than I would like it. But again, I'm gonna say that's due to the vacuum, and because if you let the vacuum build, it's fine. You only get a couple press though. If you continuously hold it and then let off and press the brake pedal again, it's hard. So, and it sinks. So I need some assistance first, and I need the vehicle running optimal first, and then we'll go do the brakes. So I'm just prioritizing this. So we're on the same page. I did quote some intake gaskets, lower plenum gaskets. I'm gonna let you see what I'm going through, hear what I'm going through, and being that this is a very complex, tight repair, I'm just going to show you the problem when I get to it, because I got to dig into a lot of stuff and get to it. So let's look at the numbers first to justify me doing this repair, and then we'll go from there. Got a vacuum gauge here. Normally what I would see with gasoline engines is going to be 20, but I've seen some as high as 15 inches. So I guess it depends on the manufacturer, but I would like to see 20, some deep vacuum. So I'm gonna hook it up to the brake booster. Hopefully I'm gonna turn this fan off, and hopefully the detailed quality of the video will give a good representation of what I'm hearing. And this is not gonna, yeah, it's gonna stay right there. So hopefully, yeah, let's leave it right there. So here's our vacuum. I'm going to apply the brake. Let you experience what I'm witnessing here. So it's nothing significant. I just don't like that. And well, I think the vacuum can be better. It runs different when it's warm and cold. Before it had a little mist to it, but it's kind of cleared up now. I want to show you also that there's no coolant in here, and that's probably because of a maintenance thing. Coolants is gone. So we probably may be dealing with other leaks. Let's see here. Vacuum. You can hear it's inside the crankcase. Let me show you in regards to the oil. The oil fill cap here. Look at that. It kind of clears up. The vacuum actually, it had went higher for a little bit. You can hear it start hissing and sucking from other places. This car is not supposed to have, it's supposed to have pressure, not vacuum. So not only do you hear air coming through the crankcase, it's not supposed to be like this. It's not supposed to be that significant. It's supposed to have pressure. 99% of the time it has pressure. I've never had to deal with the gasoline engine that had suction in the crankcase. That's just not supposed to be like that. Anyway, I digress. So misfire, hesitation a little bit, not really happy with the brake assist. The coolant's eating up a little bit. The oil, there's oil in here, but this was extremely low. So yeah, I think we're just dealing with the lifter valley. I think that's what it's called on here, but I'm not a V8 kind of guy, so I'd imagine that plate at the bottom where the intake plenum, since this has like a two-piece, a cover at the base, if it's blown out, there's vacuum in the plenum, and the other portion is exposed inside the crankcase. So if there's a leak in there, it's going to pull that vacuum inside the crankcase. I have a gasket set, and I'm going to replace that. The vacuum is so strong that it's not going to be a PCV system. It's just the vacuum is very excessive, so it has to be somewhere where there's a significant resource for it pulling vacuum, and that's going to be that gasket on the intake. So when I pull this off, I'll be able to see it a lot better. And let's get to that point. Let me start draining a little bit more of the coolant and get some of this stuff off to gain access to it, and I'll show you all the goods, assuming that I'm correct. I got the intake off. Not before having the problem though. One of the studs broke off. I'm going to say that's no big deal because I'm going to have to extract that some way. But the lifter valley looks pretty clean. Likely we'll just go ahead and replace the distributor cap for maintenance and the rotor button while it's out. I did indicate the distributor of where it goes. So I got that marked with white paint, so I put the timing back exactly the way it came. And I can't screw up this position. It seems like it's a 50-50 chance I'm gonna get it right, but I did indicate that also. So I got my white marks on the rotor button, distributor cap, and I will definitely go ahead and replace the rotor button as a preventative maintenance while I'm in here. So my next issue is just to extract this, clean the area up very good, and then get it extracted. Let me show you what I found, because I was right. Here's the intake. Let's get this flipped over. There's the gasket. It's blown out right there. So that was the problem. And I do have to replace a couple other things because I broke them as I broke a few things as I pulled it out. This is like a coolant temp sensor. So I'm gonna replace this. Hopefully we have that in stock, and I'm going to go ahead and replace this while I'm in here. Thermostat. The gasket, it wasn't leaking, but I do have a gasket, but I feel like I should just leave it alone. I feel like it, but because those paper gaskets just are just crap to me. So I'm gonna get this flipped upside down, get the gasket for the plenum out. We'll get a better look at that. So it seems like most of this job is just going to be cleaning up. I got the right bank cleaned up. I just got to do the left bank now on the driver's side. I just got a towel, not a towel, but an old shirt rag stuffed in the intake ports, and I'm going to do the coolant ports. Once I find me I got something right here. Get a rag here, ball it up, stuff it down in there, and I can vacuum the rags out when I finish. So we're good here. Good here. This is tucked. So I can just take the blade and go through it. Oh, I gotta get the gasket off first. Oops. I got all about that. I got the gasket off the other side. No problem. Uh-oh. Now we can clean it up. I have my vacuum. I might, well, let's just go ahead and get it out. So I got the bolt extracted, no big deal. Didn't take that long, just about 5 minutes. Brake cleaner and penetrating oil and some vice grips, and it took care of it. Thank goodness. The problem is the intake manifold set didn't come with new bolts. So from O'Reilly's, they had one, but it was special order. So I'm gonna have to see if they have a bolt set for this. And I gotta get the things that are broken replaced, such as a coolant temp sensor. So I'm gonna replace that hose too, that bypass hose from the water pump to the intake, because I think I probably nicked that too. So I'm gonna replace that and get some maintenance items. So I'm already like 40% done. I just gotta, once I pull the gasket off, clean the material, then I'll be 50%. Then I can get everything reassembled. But I still got to get my supplies. I'm hoping that we have what is needed, but the inventory ain't that great at O'Reilly's. Let's pull the intake gasket off, see what it looks like. There we go. Plenty of oil pooled in there. So it was interesting how it was bowed out, but I guess once it started leaking and vacuum got into the crankcase, then it started to suck that gasket out. Because I imagine it'll be the inverse. This vacuum inside the plenum here, why not go into the intake and bow in, but it's outward. I found that to be pretty interesting. But I guess naturally the gasket want to smash and push out. That's what I assume. I'm gonna take a blade and go around it and get this gasket off. Got my area cleaned up here. Here's the plate for the lower intake. I had to take it, put a wire brush to it on the wire wheel. Here's the lower gasket, and I can't begin to tell you, I'm sober-minded why I don't like old school vehicles. I'm gonna assume that all the material's out of it, just nothing fell in. Put the cover on and get the bolts in there, just run them down. I was considering putting copper spray on here only because, and then it's just the theory behind it is, if it ever has to come back off, it'll be easier since the gasket material is not going to like stick heavily to it. But what are the odds of it having to come back off? It's not. So I'm not gonna use it. I'm gonna pop these in here and run it down. This is a very weak impact gun. I can't imagine these being no more than like 9 inch. I did find a lower intake manifold gasket bolt set from O'Reilly's. It is $50, so I'm gonna pick that up after I get this ran on. And I have to get some more razor blades so I can clean the old gasket material from the intake too. And again, I'm so reminded why I don't like these. The gasket isn't protruding or anything, it's nice and flush, so it kept its shape. Let me run to the parts store. So finally I got everything put back, not 100%, I'm like 95%, assuming I didn't break anything. I did a generic pressure test, and it's not really holding the pressure like that, but it's just an old car. I don't think it's rated. The cap was sealed extremely. No, it could have been better, but it held a little bit of pressure for a little bit. It wasn't leaking out any of the areas I touched, so that's the main thing, I assume. I did have to replace coolant temp sensor and temperature sender and coolant sensor. So I did have to replace those because they just broke on contact. For the most part, everything went smooth. Had to do the battery. That was missing the bolt. So let's do the first startup and see what happens. Golly. This is a huge van, but it's easy. At least I get to work on the inside, so that's the main thing. I'm gonna cycle the key on and off and prime the fuel system. Right, here we go. So I got the timing right. I have to put the distributor back, put a new cap on. Usually I'll mess up the wires. Got new bolts. So we're good there. Yeah. Oh yeah. You don't hear that air anymore. Let it sit there and idle for a minute. I'm gonna get some coolant in there, and then we'll check the vacuum again. All right, we got the oil. I got the oil topped off. Yep. Let's back this up a little bit. I got the oil. I got the oil topped off. And got the gauge handy. Coolant is there. I'm not gonna say I got the air out, but I didn't know this had rear heat, and I guess it should have rear AC also. But based off the plumbing, I don't think it has. No, let me turn this camera around. You can take a look yourself. It's a weird plumbing system. So here's the air conditioning. So it does. Where's the suction side here? And then there's the high side. So it looks like it may go into a rear AC also, but it definitely has rear heat. It's weird because you would expect the radiator to be your highest point, but it's not. The radiator's down here, and then we got hoses going up and over to the heater box. There's a junction here, and then it goes down to the rear. So I'm pretty sure getting air out of this system is probably going to be a nightmare. That ain't my problem right now. It's just getting the air or whatever's in these brakes. So let's go ahead, and I think I can have this hang out somewhere. We'll work out. Let's start up and see if our vacuum goes to 20 inches of mercury. Because it was at 15 before. It's being at the vacuum leaks fixed. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah. Still at 15. Nah, that's no big deal. It's a little bit better because it's at 16. Definitely idles better. We're deeper in the vacuum. It's 17, 16, because there's 15, 16, close to 17. So we're better, and it idles better. It's stable. Let me apply the brake and see what happens. I can't begin to tell you, the brakes feel amazing right now. They feel great. They feel excellent. Let me review the footage and see how this vacuum looks with me applying the brake, because I had it in reverse and applying the brake. I don't know if the camera moved or reflected any sort of movement, but they feel amazing. They feel like brand hammer new. So the vacuum did go down to about 13, 14 area, but here's the thing, it's more available supply of vacuum when needed to sustain vacuum for brake assist. That make any difference. So being that it's not being depleted and going into the crankcase, the vacuum is available for the brake assist, and that's what makes it so much better. I've had brake fade happen before with brake boosters not having a supported vacuum source, because they'll leak internally, and you'll get hard, most of the time you'll get hard brake pedal, but that's what we were dealing with in this case, and fade. So I can't specifically explain the fade, but I can explain why it was hard. It was hard because we didn't have the available vacuum. So if you disconnect the check valve here, take all the air out, the vacuum out, it's going to be hard. Just like had a phone call, but just like pressing the brake pedal several times with the engine off, it'll deplete itself and it'll get hard. So that explains why the brake pedal got firm after applying the brake rapidly once it depleted. So it's fixed now. It feels amazing. The vacuum in the oil, gone. Remember before, if I put the cap there, it'll latch on and draw the cap in. Now it's not doing that. So I can hold it close. It doesn't It doesn't do anything. It doesn't draw it in. So that's fixed. I got a new thermostat, gasket, and all this other stuff. I don't like. Oh gosh, how close is that? That ain't that bad. I don't know if the AC works. I gotta figure that out.
I think that hose will be fine there.
It'll be fine. I need to figure out if some other amenities work, but that's besides the fact. I'm just thinking in addition to what I'm dealing with now. But overall, let me digress. This issue's fixed. This vehicle has 87,000 miles on it. It was a church van, like I was saying, so they probably didn't go far or do too much with this. It's 1997. It served its purpose. It's a good buy. 87,000 miles for this. It doesn't have any oil leaks under the bottom of it. These were original intake manifold gaskets that were on here. One thing I just didn't like about the gaskets of the aftermarket one, the Felpro, simply put, it's 2024 and they're still using cork style. I mean, at least, I know it's cheap, they're making a killing off of it, but at least do the consumer a favor and use the rubber stuff. I mean, it just makes sense. Something compatible to original equipment. I mean, either way. I'm gonna let this do its thing. We're good on our diagnosis. We didn't have to touch the brakes, bleed anything. It's fixed. I gave you the backstory. The owner stated that several people tried to bleed the brakes and it didn't work. And they tried replacing several things, it didn't work. So this is exactly why I'm like, okay, we could have ABS problem, but let me check the vacuum source. That's why I'm like, I need this before I can do anything else. Our vacuum was bad. That's why I went to repair what was necessary and then recheck. And I'm glad I did, because I would have been bleeding to this day because it would have never fixed the problem. I've been dealing with a lot of brake booster issues and stuff, and brake problems. So it's kind of like, you know what you need, you know what needs to happen. And I'm glad about the first time shooting something at it, even because it needed intake gaskets, was the correct thing that it needed to resolve the combination of problems that those intake gaskets has, which was the complaint with the brake problem. So anyway, this is fixed. If anything else has to happen with this vehicle, I'll definitely update. But I'd rather work on these older vehicles. We had the Prelude recently. That was a 95 or so. And then this is a 97. So hopefully we're just kind of down in a downtrend with the years. I got a 2013 I got to work on tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get back up in the current year vehicles. But we'll see what happens. If anything happens, I'll definitely update. Hit that link, subscribe to the channel, stay informed, how to Richard Smart. See you next one.